So I just saw John Krasinski's A Quiet Place, and I didn't really enjoy it all that much, which is apparently an opinion that I'm not allowed to have. And I'm not saying that based on the film's overwhelming amount of praise. I'm saying that because there have been several people who have looked at my IMDb rating for the film and are convinced that I only didn't like the film because I wanted not to like it, as though this film is somehow beyond criticism and my opinion couldn't possibly exist. Adam, you made up your mind as soon as you saw the trailer. I saw that tweet from you where you said that you probably wouldn't like it based on your own personal preferences and what you expect out of the film based on the marketing material. You're not allowed to have a good understanding of your own tastes and preferences. No, I know what you're supposed to like. Like, sure, I didn't expect to like it, but I wanted to like it. I also didn't expect to like the Lego Movie, and it was one of my favorite films of that year. I also didn't expect to enjoy the new It movie, and I was pleasantly surprised. But yeah, whatever you need to fucking tell yourself to invalidate my opinion because I didn't enjoy the film that you did. Somehow, despite apparently wanting to hate it and not giving it a chance, there's actually a few things that I liked about the film. The film was for the most part competently directed. I never found myself getting distracted by poor camera work or terrible framing choices. There was nothing really spectacular in that sense, but I'm giving credit where credit is due. The acting was fine for the most part. Usually child actors are terrible, but they were actually pretty good for most of the film. Most of the film meaning the scenes where they're not actually speaking, because as soon as they started talking, they kind of sucked. So yeah, they only sucked for a small part of the film, and the rest of the movie they were fine. The music was decent, although I kind of wish there was less of it. I like that it makes sense that the daughter character is deaf, because that explains why the family knows sign language. The creature design was actually pretty cool. I wasn't actually expecting this film to have a production budget high enough for how often they showed the monster. My expectations were that they wouldn't really show it much. As soon as the credits rolled and I saw that there was Michael Bay money behind it, it all started to make sense. The creatures were obviously computer generated, but they didn't look fake enough to take me out of the movie because of it. And that's about it for the positive things I have to say about this movie. I know it's not much, but it's there. Now here's what I didn't like. When it comes to horror films, I would argue that the film is much more effective when it's actually scary, and I understand that quite a few people found this film to be scary, so I'm definitely not arguing against your own experience or whether or not you were scared of it, but for me personally, I find it pretty fucking difficult to get scared when I'm distracted by why these characters are taking such unnecessary risks. Does anybody else feel that way? Like there's parts of the film where I really want to experience some kind of emotion other than confusion or laughter. I am really trying to feel the intended emotion when the kid goes back for the fucking batteries for his dumb noisy toy, but I can't help myself from asking basic questions. Like, why did the parents just leave without him? We're in this post-apocalyptic world and you just casually leave your children behind and forget about them? I mean, it's obvious why they went so far ahead. It's so the plot device can be forced in there. But if his parents are this careless with him, then how did he survive 90 days? It's been 90 days and this kid still doesn't understand that noise is bad? And you can't even try to claim as though the kid does know noise is bad and that he just didn't know it would make noise. Because when he starts using it and making noise, he doesn't go, oops, I'm in trouble, or oops, they're gonna get me, or oops, this is bad and this is something I was taught not to do. He just fucking plays with it as though he didn't even know that this was an issue. But yeah, whatever, kids are dumb. They can be used as literally whatever plot device you want, and it's totally fair no matter what they do. It would kind of make sense if this kid was their second deaf child, but the movie didn't really present it as though that was the case. Within the first scene of the film, we get a pretty fucking clear indicator of who's deaf and who isn't. When we're shown a close-up shot of the girl character, the audio in the film gets incredibly muffled. And this was very clearly a way to communicate that she is a deaf character. But it only ever happened with her, and it never happened with this kid. So how the fuck has it been 90 days and he still doesn't understand that sound is bad yet? And if his character is genuinely supposed to be that stupid, then why do you all just walk away without him? I don't know, call me crazy, but I feel like the stupid kid horror movie plot device is a little fucking stale. There's just so much that they do in this film that only seems to be for the purpose of putting themselves in danger. There's a scene where John Krasinski takes his kid to the river. The kid makes some noise while trying to catch a fish, but he freaks out because he's like, oh no, I made a little bit of noise, they're gonna come get me now. But then John Krasinski explains that since the river is making a decent amount of noise, they don't actually have to be quiet. At which point he yells as loud as he can right next to the waterfall just to prove it. Is that really worth the risk? For a guy with at least one dead kid, you seem to be pretty fucking confident confident in how far you can push your luck. But the bigger question here is, why don't they just live near the river? The home you have doesn't seem to be fortified enough to prevent them from getting in anyway. Even just having a fucking tent out there seems like a better idea than living in your home where if you drop something, they come kill you. Also, by this point in the film, well over a year had passed, and this kid is just now learning the concept that louder noises help dampen softer noises? Is this not something that you should have tried to communicate to him at any earlier point in the film? Has there not been one single day in the film where it's rained? You'd think that there would be at least some point where he'd be able to whisper that information to him, but nope, he's learning about this for the very first time, apparently. Also, why do you all walk around outside in bare feet? Clearly it's supposed to be seen as some sort of clever way to show that they're trying to make as little noise as possible, but could you not just tie some towels to your shoes? You know, literally any kind of soft fabric attached to the bottom of your shoes would do the job just the same without fucking up your feet. It's kind of difficult to believe that they've been doing this for over a year and haven't figured that out. There's another scene where the kids are playing a board game, but instead of using plastic pieces, they're using little bits of fabric instead, which is also clearly supposed to be seen as some sort of clever way to show that they're making as little noise as possible. Hell, they even have a dinner scene where they show that the only food they eat is soft and not crunchy. But then later in the film, they reveal that there's this other basement through a hole in the floor that you just have to lift up a mattress to get into. Why don't you spend any time down there? Why are you spending all of your time hanging out on the main floor? When John Krasinski and his wife are down there later in the film, they are talking to each other, and he says the words, "Don't worry, they can't hear you down here." Why didn't you play board games there? Why was this space completely unutilized for the first 2/3 of the movie? It would have solved quite a lot of your problems. But nope, apparently it doesn't matter if characters are constantly putting themselves in much more danger than they should be in. Because this is a horror movie and they're supposed to be in danger, and it doesn't matter if there are incredibly easy solutions to the problems that they are putting themselves into. And apparently this kind of bullshit does not distract anyone from being able to feel scared for the characters. I guess I'm just crazy. Then they've got this other basement that's accessible by stairs. To be honest, the layout of the property is a little confusing. I think this is actually a different building, but I'm not sure how far away it is, because otherwise these stairs would just lead to the same soundproof basement. Within this basement, they have a radio scanner and a microphone. They also have a whiteboard where they've written very basic and surface-level observations about these creatures. Things like confirmed blind and attacks sound. No idea why they don't use this whiteboard for something more useful. If you brought it out of the basement, you could use it to communicate with your family. I have to assume that the American Sign Language vocabulary is at least a little more limited, because why else would over a year pass without your child understanding how sound works? Now, you might say that they wouldn't want to risk bringing it up the stairs because it could make noise if you drop it, which is a reasonable thing to assume, but it's kind of difficult to believe that the same characters that would think that are also perfectly comfortable having the character that is 9 months pregnant carrying shit up and down the stairs by herself. I guess if your only goal in the film is to have characters constantly putting themselves in danger, then you did a good job. But if your goal was also to have it not seem incredibly fucking forced, then I can't really say you did well with that one. Alright, I'm gonna enter spoiler territory now, so if you don't want to see spoilers for this film, then just click to this part in the video. There's your warning, 3, 2, 1. So as the 9 months pregnant woman is walking back up the stairs, her bag somehow gets caught on a nail as she's walking up the stairs, and as she continues walking, it somehow bends the nail upwards. Like, holy fuck, are you ever strong? But unfortunately, just like every other plot device in this film that exists to put the characters in danger, this one doesn't make any fucking sense either. First of all, why was there a nail hammered into the step from underneath it? At what point was someone laying on their back underneath the staircase hammering a nail upwards into it? What the fuck is that all about? Apparently somebody did that and then hammered the nail to the side, and this pregnant lady managed to bend the nail back upwards without even noticing? Alright. So obviously the next time she goes down the stairs, she steps on it and drops some shit. But not before we get another completely nonsensical scene. John Krasinski and his son are walking back from the river, and apparently the kid's not even looking where he's fucking going and just walks into his back. At which point he looks up to see why his father has stopped walking, and they see an old man with a dead body next to him that is assumed to be his wife's. John Krasinski gives him the shush sound as though to imply like, hey, don't I know you really feel like screaming over your wife's dead body right now, but don't make any noise because that would be very dangerous. But you'd think that if the guy was gonna scream, he would do that before they got there? Was he literally just waiting for someone to come along so he could scream at them? Did he conveniently just discover the body at the exact same moment that Jim and his son were walking by? I wanted to feel fear, but I felt confusion and amusement. It is so incredibly cheesy and strange. So when the wife steps on that inexplicable nail sticking up from the stairs, she drops her shit and it makes a lot of noise. So now the things are after her and she hides upstairs in the bathroom. But it's really unfortunate because she's also going into labor. So she really comically has to give birth as quietly as possible. She's in the bathtub trying not to make noise while the thing's walking around the bathroom. The scene cuts away to show Jim, who makes his way up there. And when he gets there, she's no longer in the bathtub and he gets really sad because there's blood in the bathtub and he thinks that she's surely dead. At which point it's revealed that she had moved to the shower. And they reveal this by having her slam her fucking hand against the glass as a jump scare. Like, that shit was undebatably loud. And the movie has very clearly communicated that these things are somewhere close by. If they could hear you dropping something, then they'd also hear you slamming your fucking hand against the glass. But for some reason, the movie doesn't even treat this as though there's any sense of peril at all. Like, gotcha, jump scare, but she's fine and that's all you're supposed to pay attention to right now. Don't worry, they're not coming, it doesn't matter. So meanwhile, the kids are at the designated meetup spot on top of a grain silo, and we get yet another dumb convenience that puts the characters in peril. Somehow it turns out that where the one kid was actually standing was actually on top of a hatch, and it just gives away and completely falls apart at that very moment that he's standing on it. Is this the first time anyone's ever stood there? Is the designated meetup spot a place where the dad has never actually been? So now this kid's inside this grain silo and he starts drowning as though it were quicksand. And right away that seemed a little weird. I was kind of under the impression that grain was grain and not quicksand, that perhaps you might get stuck in it and have difficulty getting out, but not have it behave like fucking quicksand. But since I'm fair, I thought, you know what, perhaps I'm wrong, and even if I'm not, if it just behaves this way in this universe or whatever, that's totally fine, as long as it's consistent. So the girl jumps down to save him and climbs on top of one of the door pieces that fell down, this metal door that she has now climbed onto and is using to reenact the final scene from Titanic. So she reaches down and grabs her brother and pulls him up, and now they're both on top of this door raft, completely safe from drowning in grain. But then the monster shows up and they hide by going underneath the metal door raft, at which point the monster steps on the metal door raft. So these two kids are underneath this metal door that has this giant monster on top of it, and they're now not sinking for some reason. And it's not even like they're hanging onto this metal door raft with their fingertips as they dangle far underneath it. No, instead their bodies are forming a layer between the grain and the door raft, which now has a lot more weight on it. Why aren't you sinking anymore? Is the grain quicksand or is it not? I don't really care which one you decide, but you have to pick one of them. If you're going to have it behave in a certain way for the sole purpose of creating more peril for these characters, then fucking stick with it. Why only sometimes? Screw me for wanting to have a story where things happen for actual reasons other than just simply to put the characters in more peril at any given moment. Screw me for wanting any sense of consistency. Oh, I know what you want me to do. I should turn off my brain. But wait, I can't, because my brain is what I use to experience and appreciate film. If you go into every movie with your brain turned off, then what do you even like about them? I guess the purpose of making a film isn't for it to be appreciated. No, it's to help you fall asleep. So the mother's in the soundproof basement with her newborn baby, and the entire basement is flooding from a leaky pipe now, just because she needs to be in more peril and no other reason. So as she quietly steps through the chest-high water making her way out of there, it turns out that there was a monster underneath the water the whole time. How did it get there? Was it there the whole time? Like when John Krasinski was talking to her and everything? I guess it just snuck down there. So Jim finally finds his kids and he tells them to go to this truck at the top of a hill, but I can't for the life of me understand why he asked them to do that. Why don't you just walk back to the house that you can see from here? Like, it's implied that they're going in the truck to get back to the house? What the hell are you thinking? Isn't that gonna make a lot more noise? What's your plan here? So the kids somehow get into the truck without making any noise, I guess. Jim's outside grabbing an axe and then one of the things attacks him, but then his son sees this and starts screaming and inside the truck. So the thing starts attacking the truck and fucking it up. It looks like the kids are done for, but then Jim decides he has a great idea. He makes eye contact with his kids who are in the truck as the thing's attacking the top of it, and then he signs, "I love you." And it's so cheesy and overdramatic. We get a close shot of the kids looking at him while they're in the truck, and the truck's just not moving anymore, like we're supposed to forget that the thing's still on top attacking it. No, don't think about what the scene just set up. This is their moment, and that's all that's important. So anyway, Jim saves them by reenacting the ending from The Descent Part 2, and it was just as funny. So the kids escape by putting the truck into neutral and having it roll down the hill quietly. I still don't fucking understand why they needed to be in the truck at all, but okay. It's not like they had very far to go. So now the two kids and the mom are back in the basement past these stupid nail stairs. And one of the monsters comes down and it's about to fuck them up. But then the girl has this crazy fucking epiphany that comes out of nowhere. She looks at the whiteboard where it says, "What is their weakness?" And she's like, "I know, it's my cochlear implant." So she takes her implant thing from her ear and holds it up to the microphone, which for some reason is attached to powered on speakers, and the monster is clearly being hurt by this frequency being emitted by her implant thingy. I can understand the microphone being there so that you can communicate to other people if you find them on a radio frequency, but why on earth is it connected to powered speakers? You'd think that that would just create more unnecessary risk for noise. Also, how did you know that the monsters don't like your implant thingy? The only other time in the film when this was referenced was when one was sneaking around behind her and she didn't even notice it. Her implant made a weird kind of noise and then us as viewers got to see that the monster didn't like it, but she never did. The whole scene was trying to go for this kind of, oh, she's deaf, she doesn't even know it's behind her, oh no, what's she gonna do kind of feeling. So she never noticed it. So how the fuck would she know that her implant is something that it doesn't like? And also, if you have these gigantic loud speakers laying around connected to a microphone, then why have you spent this entire film not using that towards your advantage? We were very clearly taught earlier in the film that the monsters don't give a shit about noise as long as it's constant. Why don't you just connect that iPod that you had earlier to it? You can have a song that loops forever. Just hang out by the river for a couple of days if you're concerned about the monsters checking out the initial noise, and then you can make as much noise as you want because there'll be other louder noise that drowns it out. This is a concept that you taught us in this film. These are rules that you set up and explained to us. Hell, if there's some strange reason why looping a song wouldn't work, then why don't they just record the sound of the river? They don't really seem to have any shortage of electronic devices or electricity. I'm sure one of them's got a smartphone they can charge and bring to the river and press record. Why don't you just bring that back and connect it to the speakers and play the river sound at your home? If the constant sound of the river is something that they don't give a shit about and it's an added benefit because it means that you're able to make noise and that you are safer, then why don't you do that? Why don't you do any of the dozens of things you could be doing to make things easier on yourself? Why does everything you do in this movie result in you being in more peril than before? Oh yeah, because it's all just shitty fucking plot devices. So the monster's in pain because of the frequency from the cochlear implant. Apparently, while John Krasinski was trying to fix it earlier in the film, he accidentally invented a new frequency, I guess. If it's just high-pitched noises that it doesn't like, you'd think that the rest of the world would have figured this out. There are quite literally areas in the United States right now that have installed high-frequency sound devices with the aim of keeping away bugs and rodents, and also young people. These things already exist, and it would be pretty fucking easy to figure out that the monsters don't like them.
This is called a mosquito. It emits a high-pitched sound designed to keep loiterers away, but the question is, does it unfairly target young people?
It's not like there isn't any other information about them that people figured out. There's a scene in the movie where they're walking by an abandoned newspaper stand and the headline reads, "It's sound!" Do newspaper printing machines not make sound? It's my understanding that they're actually pretty fucking noisy. I guess it's pretty convenient that that information was properly distributed and not the fact that they really obviously hate high frequencies. Unless Jim actually invented a new frequency by accident. So anyway, the monster's in pain and then the mom decides decides to shoot it with a shotgun, which seems to kill it instantly, meaning that bullets work on them. Is this an alternate universe where the United States military was never a thing? Apparently guns work just fine. What's the issue here? Oh no, the sound's going to attract more of them that I can shoot. This is set in America, right? If guns can kill them just fine, then these things wouldn't stand a fucking chance. I am trying my very hardest to appreciate this film, but unfortunately the device that I use to appreciate films is called a brain, which I'm apparently not allowed to use when watching this movie. Is this seriously the film that everybody thinks I'm not allowed to dislike? This is the film that you've decided is only possible to dislike if the person watching wanted to dislike it? Seriously? Now, if you enjoyed this film, I think that's perfectly fine. Just because you have an opinion that I don't doesn't mean that I consider yours to be invalid. And it's kind of fucking embarrassing that some people have created an environment in which I feel as though this still needs to be said. To everybody who is not a moron, I apologize for explaining what you already knew. You're not wrong for liking it, and I am not wrong for disliking it. You are, however, pretty fucking wrong if you think that I'm supposed to like it. I really wanted to enjoy and be scared by this film, but there wasn't a single fucking scene that I was able to take seriously, for the many reasons that I explained in this review. In my opinion, this movie fails in almost every way. What the hell is the point of a horror movie if I'm not scared and I don't give a shit about any of the characters? Maybe if they didn't act like idiots that were only concerned about creating new plot devices the entire fucking movie, then I could've. So yeah, I didn't like it. And hopefully now some of you at least understand why. And I'm giving this one a 3 out of 10.